Hello, my name's Kevin Pickard. I work for Swim England East Region. I'm here to talk to you today about developing and supporting our age group swimmers as they move through their swimming journey and your role as parents and guardians as part of that. I'm going to talk through the competition structure in swimming and how it's changed over the last few years, and how Swim England have introduced a development programme that sits alongside that competition pathway to support our young athletes. Obviously for yourselves, how as parents and guardians you can support the swimmers. So starting with the competition programme, we've got 6 tiers of competitions that operate in our country at the moment. We've got our internal club development galas. We then move up to some of our network galas that might take place between a few clubs. We're then at the county championship level, which is where most of our swimmers start their competition journey. And then we move on to the regional championships, national championships, and then up to the international events. It's changed quite a lot over the last few years, so just to give you a little bit of a background as to why the competition pathway's changed, we felt that there needs to be times during the year when swimmers can focus on their training, and times during the year where they focus solely on competitions. So you'll see we've got our clear times in the year for training, we've got clear times for peaking to make sure that on a given day at a given time we can get the best performance out of our young athletes. More swimmers training for the full season. Too often we used to have a lot of swimmers stopping early during the year, and we felt that that caused a lot of problems. So we're looking to actually implement a competition structure that encourages swimmers to swim right up to July when the competition season ends. And progressive competition ages. So you will see at a county level, swimmers are starting at age as of end of year 11, moving up to a regional level, 12, and then at a national level, 13. It's progressive, and we don't overload the swimmers with too much too young. So our age groups at county level, there's 33 of those that take place across the country, 11 years and upwards. Obviously that's age as of end of year. The reason for that is it aligns to the national and international competition calendars. Swimmers that go on to the European Championships, World Championships, things like that. Certainly at junior level, it's all age as of end of year, so we've made sure that that follows all the way through our domestic programme as well. You've got a selection of age bands that go right up to 16 and over. Some counties operate them slightly differently, depending on what pool space and what their demographic looks like in terms of swimmers. The qualification for these, there's a qualifying time for every single event. What is something that I found very useful to explain to parents is that qualification times are not a measure of success or lack of success. They are merely a way of controlling the size of the meet. So if you work out how many age groups you've got and how many swimmers are going to be in each age to fit into the pool time you have available, qualifying times are set to manage those numbers and make sure that the competition schedule fits within the pool time that's available. The times for these, if they're qualifying for a county event, must be achieved at a licensed competition. Licensing involves level 4, 3, 2 and 1 meets. Obviously we can explain that further if you require any more information on that. Some additional information encouraged across the whole country is that all the county championships take place throughout January or February, depending on what pool space there is available. These can take place short course or long course. Obviously in the east we've got 3 long course facilities, so at least 3 counties have not got that option of long course. That's not a problem at all. Certainly at their age, when they're starting out at a county level competition, it doesn't matter whether it's long course or short course. And just to give you some context, across the country you're looking at approximately 13,000 athletes will come away from county championships with medals, and by default approximately 4,500 will come away with golds. If you compare that to the Rio Olympics, 9 athletes came home with a medal, including our relay swimmers. So it's important that we keep things in context, and we certainly should be celebrating our young athletes for their success, but making sure it's kept within perspective of the wider picture. Now, process goals. Certainly as a young athlete, this is really important. It's something British Swimming are working really hard at with their senior athletes at the moment. And it's effectively making sure that the targets for any competition are based around controllable areas that the athletes can actually influence themselves. For example here, we've got a 400 individual medley. And the objective is to make sure that the splits and pacing are even between front crawl and butterfly. And you've got stroke counts up there. So you're not talking about end times, we're not talking about winning medals. What you're seeing is some processes that are going to be put into place to do with stroke counts and balancing splits to make sure that the end goal is achieved. This is applicable all the way down to our young athletes, making sure they're, for example, doing 3 kicks off the walls. They're making sure they're not breathing on the first stroke out of the turn on front crawl, little things like that. But these are processes that the swimmers can control, and whether they come first or last in a race, they can still achieve success. So the development program, how does that sit alongside the competition pathway? What does it look like? It mirrors what goes on in terms of our competitions. So for county level competitions, there's a county level development pathway that goes all the way up to regional, national and international level. We're at the county level. Now this is our model in this country at the moment. It might not be that clear, but we can have a look on the slides that will be attached to this video. We sit down here on our county development programme at the moment. We've then got a regional development programme, moving on to our England Phase 1, Phase 2, and then on to our Phase 3 and up into international competition, we hope. The important thing to get from this model, even if it's not that clear, is that you can move in and out as a club swimmer at various points. So a really interesting fact is that Adam Peaty, for example, was not picked up at the county development programme, the regional development programme, or the first few phases of England programmes. He was quite a late developer. So by no means, if your young swimmer's not on the county development programme, it's not a problem at all. And certainly the focus with our county level development programme is to make sure all our coaches are engaging, because it's a lot easier to get 20 or 30 coaches across a county to access a programme than it is to cater for 2,000 or 3,000 swimmers that are trying to access a programme. It also means that coach is then skilled up to take that information back to their club and pass it on to all their swimmers. So it's really important for you as parents that you're encouraging your committees and your coaches to engage with these programmes, whatever level they are working at. Again, we've got quite a busy slide here, but what it effectively shows is that at a county level here, we've got approximately 800 young swimmers that are picked up on the development programme. That trims down when we move to our regional programme. It trims down some more when we get to our England Phase 1. And by the time we get to the sharp end, where we're talking podium and podium potential, you're looking at less than 50 athletes across the entire country. Now, across the top here, you'll see some logos, and that's actually explaining who's responsible for each part of the pathway. So the county programme is looked after by the county governing bodies. The regional programme is looked after by the regional governing bodies. The Home Nations talent programmes are looked after by the Home Nations, so in our case that would be Swim England. And then when we move up to the higher levels, you're looking at British swimming. What's important to understand here is we all work together on this. Information comes right down from British swimming, all the way down to the county level, and feedback from the county level makes it right back up to the top. So it is a two-way process. So the county development programme, we've got swimmers, we've got coaches, we've got team managers, we've got sports science and sports medicine practitioners, and parents and guardians, being yourselves. So it's involving quite a team of people. Obviously our coaches working within the clubs, our team managers, these are becoming more and more prominent, and they're actually working to support the coach at a competition in some of the more non-essential parts that a coach would have to deal with. For example, arranging a coach to get to a competition, or booking a hotel for a team, maybe booking flights if the team is going abroad, things like that. So it supports the coach and allows them to do their role more effectively, and we're making sure that they are included as much in the development programme as much as everybody else. Our sports science and sports medicine practitioners, that can include your nutritionists, your psychologists, strength and conditioning coaches. So even at quite a young age, we're getting the basics of some of these elements that are going to become crucial further down the line for them. Another busy chart for you. You'll see at the top some dates. Now we've got various things on the sheet here, but what we can pick out for our swimmers, nothing really starts till April, and that's where our actual development camps are starting. Now it depends on which county you sit as depending on what dates they're going to be, but generally April through to October there will be 3 development camps that target the 5 areas that we spoke about in the last slide. In March we've got coaching conferences and team manager conferences that we would encourage as many people as possible to access, And then we moved back to February, January time, and we've had our parent guardian workshops, which were delivered at the majority of the county championships. Anyone who did miss that or was unable to make the event, that's what this video is for today. So what does that development programme look like for our young county swimmers? It's 3 one-day events. These might be full days, these might be half days, these might be evenings, depending on what facilities are available, but there's 3 of them. We're looking at 24 to 36 swimmers, depending on the pool space that we've got available, but they are targeted primarily at 11-year-olds age as of end of year, and they're selected from rankings. It's wholly objective, it's a very, very clear way of selecting our swimmers. It's coach orientated though, and we know that certainly looking at an 11-year-old, we very rarely can look at an 11-year-old and pick out future champions from that crop. Like I say, we might have 2,000 or 3,000 swimmers in a county. However, we have no more than 20 clubs within any of our counties within the East region, and for us to access 20 coaches on the development programme is very, very easy. So although we do have some swimmers attending the events, it really is important that your club coaches are engaging with these programmes so that the information then makes it back for everybody. A couple of examples I've put on the screen there. PT and Prouds. At 11 years old, they would not have been picked up on any talent programme, but by the age of 18, we're both competing at a senior international level. So it's certainly not a marker for future development, seeing a swimmer on a programme at the age of 11. Just to give you a bit more information about what the actual days are going to include, they're held short course. We're working on things like streamlining and basic stroke technique. We're not getting down into really, really fine details. We're getting the absolute basics right to lay a foundation for the future. Dry land training, we're doing some stuff on poolside and potentially in the sports hall with some pre and post pool movement activities. That's a really, really important part of swimming nowadays, and it's becoming prominent in all our tiers of development. So you go through the pathway. And some fundamental movement patterns. These might include basic squats, for example, lunging, things like that. That might encourage you with track starts. Lots of different basic movement patterns that we want to get right at a young age. And then we've got 3 workshops. So these workshops are going to be talking again around stroke technique, performance lifestyle, so actually looking at things away from the pool, and performance nutrition. And those workshops will be delivered for anyone on the programme, for their parents as well. That information also will then get back to all our parents in our clubs via the coaches. So our parents programme, we've already talked about the County Parents Workshop, which hopefully you had delivered at your county championships. If not, obviously good to see you watching the video. And then you've got attendance at the 3 county camps, as I talked about in the last slide. Just to see where the programme moves as you go up through the pathway, we've then got our regional programme over here. We then move to our national phase 1, national phase 2 and national phase 3. If you actually look at the content of these camps as you move up through, it's progressive, it gets slightly more advanced at each level. Again, there's opportunities for parents on these, there's opportunities for team managers, and there is a lot of opportunities for coaches. So whatever level your club is at, there is something for you, but you need to engage with it. So volunteers, the majority of our volunteers are made up of current swimming parents or swimmers that have retired and their parents are still involved in swimming. So just to give you an idea of some of the roles that are out there, we've got team management, we've got refereeing, judging, timekeeping, marshalling at competitions, like warm-ups and swim downs, collating and managing entries for meets, selling and producing programmes and start lists, all of those things that happen at a competition that you might be oblivious to, but they require our volunteers in order to happen. Catering for other volunteers and coaches, announcing at competitions, something that's making competitions so much more interesting and lively is having that commentary. If that's a skill you feel like you can offer, please come forwards. And coaching qualifications. Certainly within our areas, we've got a lot of funding available to support people who want to qualify as coaches, whether that's level 1 or level 2, and we're actually making sure that people who really want to get involved in the sport, we're supporting them. So, first point for you here. Over the course of the county championships, when you watch 11-year-olds taking place, What factors do you think have contributed to the success of people that are winning the medals? So just have a little think about some of the things here. I've got a few pointers to go through on the next slide, and I'm sure you're aware of some of these things, but some of them might not be as obvious as others. So we've got early maturation. It's very easy to see the 11-year-old who's up here versus some of the 11-year-olds that haven't grown yet. It's completely normal and it's not a problem. Season of birth bias. A swimmer that's born in January versus a swimmer that's born in December is going to have 11 extra months of growth. That could potentially influence their performance as an 11-year-old. Exposure to higher coaching expertise. And what we're talking about there is within clubs, some coaches actively pursue and develop their coach development, and that means that the swimmers in their clubs benefit from that. Some swimmers that don't have that opportunity might find themselves not benefiting as much. Swimmers potentially specialising in just swimming at the age of 11, which I'm not sure is necessarily the best idea. I think it's important that our swimmers have a great physical literacy across a range of sports, especially at a young age. And it's very, very easy to specialise too early and then actually end up dropping out as swimmers lose interest when they get older. You've then got swimmers taking on greater training loads. So some clubs might have access to a lot more pool time, but we've got to make sure that our 11-year-olds, certainly at the bottom end of the pathway, are not pushed into those high volume programs too early, because again, they could lose interest, they could burn out, and then we actually lose those swimmers. Higher developed capacity for learning. Some swimmers learn quicker than others. Some are at different points on their learning journey. And again, if that means that they're then faster in a competition at the age of 11, it's not a big problem, but it's just something to be aware of. Ability to execute quality skills consistently under pressure. Again, some swimmers are better at this than others, and certainly at the first tier of the competition pathway that's organised by the governing bodies, so the counties, you can see some swimmers that in the heat of the battle can actually deal with it a lot better, put their skills out really, really well, and that's, again, it's not a problem. Swimmers take a lot more time to learn these things, and as they go through the pathway, that will change. They might come through a little bit later on. They might start acquiring skills a lot better when they're 14, 15, 16. As I said, it's not a problem. Access to sports science and sports medicine support. Some clubs have access to physios, land training and things like that. It means at the age of 11 that swimmer might be slightly more progressed than a swimmer who doesn't have access to that. But again, it's not a problem. We want to make sure we're not overloading our youngsters with too much too soon, and as they come through the pathway, we've got plenty of things we can add on. And then family support. Obviously, some clubs have a really good structure in place, but if they haven't and it's heavily reliant on family support, some swimmers might not have that, which is not a problem, but it's just important to be aware that there are factors that influence swimming other than just their swimming speed. I've put a few tips up on the side here just to kind of help with some of these. Control the controllables. Certainly make sure that you're only worrying about the things that you can control, because everything else we can't control. A long-term view. You won't see an 11-year-old Olympic champion, okay? You really won't. So what's important to remember is it's actually quite a long journey. Certainly on the recent Olympic team, the ages of our athletes was up into the 20s. So at the age of 11, they've still potentially got 10 to 15 years ahead of them in the competitions. So it's not a big problem. We move down, coach development. Okay, I've already mentioned it, but coach development equals all swimmers benefiting. We always have a limited number of places on these programs that we offer, but we certainly have an open door policy with coaches. We will take every single coach we can cater for, and that information then makes it back to the clubs. It's process focused. I've already talked about process goals, and I think it's important we recognise that as a key thing going forwards and really instill that in our 11-year-olds. We're never comparing swimmers at age group levels. As I've talked about, there's so many different factors that affect our young people all the way through their development. And it's not a big issue, but we do need to recognise that some people will compare. Oh, your swimmer's faster than my swimmer. Your swimmer's faster than my swimmer. You should be beating that swimmer. We shouldn't be having those kind of conversations, ever. Our age group swimmers all grow and develop at different rates, and it's important we allow them the opportunity to do that and have enough fun that they actually want to stay involved in our sport for many years to come. As I've put as the last point there, minimising our dropout. There was a study done before the London Olympics that tracked the top 100 11-year-old boys in this country. Followed that through to the age of 18, 95% of them had left the sport. Now that is a national statistic. It might be a little bit different in the East region, but we've certainly got a huge issue with retaining athletes as they move into the older age groups. And a lot of that comes down to the pressures and the stresses that our young swimmers go through or have placed upon them by those around them. So we've got to make sure we do our best to minimise that dropout. The athletic triangle, it's very, very simple. Parents, swimmers and coaches. You three all functioning together equal a great result. It's really, really important though that we understand that we need to work with all three areas of that and not treat everyone in isolation and just assume that parents know what they're doing and coaches know what they're doing and the swimmers are all okay. It's got to be an inclusive approach that engages all three areas. Now, talking again about athlete-centred stuff, we've got our athlete right in the middle there, and we've got our parents and we've got our coaches. We've got a few other areas that might contribute, certainly when they move up into the regional and national programmes. There's some other staff that might be getting involved. Who could they be? So we've got team managers, we've got nutritionists, we've got psychologists, we've got physiotherapists, sports scientists, strength and conditioning coaches, lifestyle management consultants, and there's probably a lot more. But what's important to recognise is that as things progress, as you go through the pathway, there will be a lot more people involved. So the 23 to run 1 rule. What does that mean? Effectively, certainly for our young swimmers, if you look at the average amount of hours that our young swimmers are doing in the pool, 23 hours in a day, they're probably spending an hour of that swimming on average across the week. So what we're actually looking at is maybe over a period of 7 days, only 7 hours is actually being spent in the swimming pool, and yet very often in a performance situation, when something doesn't go well, our first point of focus is to look at the swimming pool and say the problem must be in the pool. There's a 23 out of 24 chance, certainly at a young age, that the problem is actually elsewhere. It could be something going on at school, could mean they haven't slept that well, they could have grown, there could be a whole range of issues, and it's really, really important we recognise that. One of the things we're talking about at the bottom there, that we're actually committed to making sure we're working with both parents and guardians to make sure we're educating you guys in how you can support your child and what some of these issues do look like. So, coach and parental support, we've got 3 different types coming from our coaches and 3 different types that come from our parents. We've got informational support that comes from our coaches, that's our technical feedback, swimming specific. We've then got emotional support, but they might give a little bit of that as required. The swimmer might need just a little bit of a boost, and the coach is well within their capacity to do that. And esteem support, again, they might need some support from the coach, but that will only be some. When we move over to the parent and the guardian role, you can see there's been a huge kind of step up with the emotional and the esteem support, because as parents, that is what our young swimmers will look to you for. They look to us for technical feedback, and they'll look to you for the hugs and the kisses and the cuddles to make sure that they know they feel safe and secure, even if their swimming world is falling apart around them. Now, the important thing I'll put at the bottom there, tangible support in terms of finance and taxi. You're going to spend a lot of time driving around, swimming both to pools for training and competition pools. It takes up a huge amount of time and cost. Okay, and it's important to recognise that's something the coach doesn't provide, that's down to you as parents. So we're very clear on the types of support that both our coaches and our parents give, and we don't ever cross over. It's very, very important that making sure our parents are not giving technical feedback or that our coaches are offering too much emotional or esteem support. Certainly with the technical feedback, if parents start giving that, it can often become confusing because you'll be getting 2 sources of information that could often be quite conflicting. But I'd really, really encourage you to ensure that coaches are allowed to do the coaching role, and as parents, please ensure you're doing your roles as effectively as possible. In our triangle, we then get the best result for our athlete, which is what all of this is all about. So, provide an example of a situation where parents or guardians may choose to provide informational support to their young swimmer. What might be the negative consequences for the swimmer? We've already just mentioned this. Having technical feedback as a young swimmer from your parents might be very, very confusing because your coach might have told you something completely different. Now, how that links in is that if these support mechanisms are done very well, sport competence in terms of the swimmer's perception of how well they are doing at swimming, their self-esteem, their self-confidence, their enjoyment levels, their commitment, because that is linked to those above areas, and ultimately their performance outcomes go up. And vice versa, if all of that is done poorly, we then find that swimmers become anxious, stressed, worried, and they drop out. And that's where I feel like we're losing a huge amount of our swimmers. So it's really, really important we understand if we get these things right, what the outcome will be, but also if we get these things wrong, what the potential issues could be. So the dream starts here. Put up there the Rebecca and Bill example. For any of you who don't know, that's Rebecca Adlington. She got 4 Olympic medals, 2 at the London Olympics, 2 at the Beijing Olympics, and her coach Bill. Rebecca's now retired, and you probably see her on TV commentating at a lot of events. And you've got Bill there, who's now the GB head coach. They started working together when Rebecca was quite young, 11, 12 years old, and they worked all the way through to when she won her Olympic medals. You had a really strong partnership, and certainly talking to Bill, he articulated that the relationship with the parents was very, very good, and that athletic triangle functioned very, very well. And that's what we want to get to. We want to get to a point where we all carry out our roles effectively for the benefit of the athlete. So just to give you some further information, you've obviously got your County Association website, we've got the East Region Swimming website, eastswimming.org, we've got the National Swimming website, swimming.org, we've got the British Swimming website, britishswimming.org, and then we've got something called Off the Blocks. That's a British swimming platform you can register for online. It's for swimmers, it's for parents, it's for coaches. There's some really useful information on there. So if you just Google search British Swimming Off the Blocks, and you can register from there. And then myself, I'm the East Region Talent Officer. My name's Kevin Pickard, and my email is kevin.pickard@swimming.org. Please get in touch if you've got any questions. I'm not saying we'll have all the answers, but we're certainly happy to signpost you in the direction of someone that might. Thank you very much.